Hello everybody and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. So today we are reviewing Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Now this is a very exciting time for me personally because, quite frankly, this show was a lot of fun, but first, we should talk about what the hell this is. Now, for those of you who have watched my channel recently, I recently did a review of Godzilla Minus One. That was made by Toho, and they are a Japanese company that makes all the Godzilla stuff. They're like the ones who originally made Godzilla. However, you know that there have been Godzilla-style movies since like 2014 by legendary studios who've been paying attention to movies. And all of that, including that really bad anime King Kong show, yeah, that was them. I didn't say they were always good. In fact, I would say their quality is lower, but more dumb fun found. They got the American rights to make a sort of shared universe, like the MCU, back when that was the big fad. And props to Legendary. They're basically one of the only two companies to survive the downfall of the connected universe that's been happening in recent years. I mean, even Marvel seems to be in a worse state than their connected universe, so props to them. They've done a good job. Keeping that B- consistently. Anyway, my opinions on them aside, this show is an Amazon TV Plus exclusive, which, yes, not the best place to have a show, but it was critically praised, and quite frankly, I agree with that praise. There's a lot of good things to talk over here, so let's get into it. What is the show about? Now, this show follows two loosely connected plots in different time periods. The modern day plot is set in 2015 and follows two half-siblings, Kate and Kentaro Randa, who are looking for their father with the help of Kentaro's ex-girlfriend May, who has a shady past. Kate discovers Kentaro's existence after she received a key to a Tokyo apartment following her dad's death. They lived in Los Angeles, for reference. When she arrived, she found out her father had an entire second family, and she had a half-sibling. So in an attempt to find closure, the two half-siblings go on a world-hopping adventure to uncover their father and his connections to this shady organization, Monarch, who are like, for those who are unaware, Monarch is the organization that tracks the kaiju and studies them, or titans as they're called in this show. They were a fairly secret organization until a few years after Godzilla 2014, which is set in 2014, so this is when they're still, like, somewhat known, like, people saw their uniforms in Godzilla Attack, the main character did, for example, but they're not, like, a publicly recognized part of the government, or organization officially recognized publicly by the government. The second plot is set in 1950s and follows the founding and early years of Monarch from the perspective of its three founders, the siblings' grandparents, Bill Randa and Keiko Miura, and the former army officer, Lee Shaw. Now, moving on to the context and timeline of this, because I want to go over some details first. One criticism I will level at this show is its confusing timeline. Unless you are very familiar with Legendary's Monsterverse, it can be difficult to know when exactly everything's taking place. This only becomes more complicated when you realize that the past timeline scene episodes in episode 1 are actually set after all but the last episode's flashback scenes. In addition, the final few episodes, it became difficult to understand just how much time was passing during those episodes, and due to some shenanigans with the universe, I'm not going to go into spoilers there. However, even as someone who has watched all the episodes and movies in the franchise, it was disorienting for at least the first 3 episodes, and got a little confusing at times. So for those of you who want to know beforehand, this modern day story is set between Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of All Monsters, which is set in 2019. Meanwhile, the past storyline shows Monarch in the years prior to Skull Island until the last episode, which takes place partially before the Kong Skull Island movie. When I'm referring to Kong Skull Island here, I'm not referring to the animated Skull Island show, I'm referring to the Kong Skull Island movie that had Samuel Jackson in it. Because naming is so confusing in this franchise. We're about to get another Kong X Godzilla to go with the Kong vs. Godzilla. Don't get me started on that. Moving on to my opinions on the plot, so we can think about something different for a second before I blow up. I think it might be the best written part of the entire Monsterverse. Granted, that's not exactly a high bar to clear, since Kong Skull Island, the movie, was the only one of these that had anything above like subpar writing. We're here for the monster fight. That was fine. Again, we're here to watch the kaiju smack each other, and these movies did a really, really good job with that. However, especially after Godzilla Minus One, I had been craving something with a bit higher quality of story writing, and this delivered, at least in my opinion. However, the plot line set in the past about Monarch's founding was far and away the highlight for me. And I really wish the whole show could have been about that. The story has the main trio, 2 scientists and 1 former soldier, discovering the existence of kaiju and forming Monarch. The plot then has this musing on the push and pull between the desire to study and learn things that scientists often find themselves in conflict with the desire of militaries that often fund that research, because, you know, they want to blow stuff up and they want something that can be useful from a military perspective, which isn't always the best way to get research funded. It's interesting. I like the push and pull between it, and it's not entirely one-sided because it shows the various conflicting ideas on either side. It very much comes in favor of scientific research for scientific research, but that's a whole other story. The modern day story, despite being a little less interesting, does end up complementing these ideas, however. It shows the modern Monarch as a stiff and overworked organization that has become so secretive it drifted away from its original goals. It explores the other source of scientific funding with Apex Cybernetics and the unique costs of profit-driven research when, you know, a scientist goes to a company for research and they're like, well, we don't necessarily want you to blow stuff up with this, but we need to make a profit at the end of the year. The last part is a little undeveloped, though, and I think it's going to be a bigger part in Season 2 because they're sort of working for Apex at the end. It's complicated. I'm not going to get into the details on that because, again, super spoilery. However, these storylines are brought to life with some really good actors, particularly, again, like I said earlier, the 3 Monarch founders in the past storyline do an excellent job. The founders are Keiko, played by Mari Yamamoto, Bill Randers, played by Anders Holm, and Lee Shaw, who is played by both Wyatt Russell in the past and Kurt Russell in the modern day, which is actually kind of an interesting idea, using a father and son to portray an older and younger version of itself. It's a good idea. The 3 have great chemistry and play off each other really well. Mari Yamamoto's portrayal of Keiko was probably my favorite in the whole show. I really liked her character. And she will probably be a lead character for Season 2 as well, which is a lot of fun. Meanwhile, the future plotline has Anna Sawai playing Kate, Kirsten Clemens playing May, and Rin Watabe playing Kintaro. They all do a pretty good job, but I did think Kintaro was a little dull. May had this whole corporate espionage plotline, Kate had the trauma from Godzilla's attack and the loss of her girlfriend. But Kintaro's past just kind of felt like it was from his own bad decisions, like he ruined his art gallery premiere by just laying in bed and having sex with May or whatever. I'm still fuzzy on the exact details of what happened there. I mean, May also made bad choices, don't get me wrong, but she was also actively misled and freaking fled the country to try and escape and fix those mistakes and keep her family out of it. Kintaro just kind of felt dull and lifeless on screen. His best scenes were in episode 1 and 2 when he first meets Kate, and they're like, what do you mean he was your dad? He's our dad. Holy shit, he fucking cheated on mom. Yeah. So, after that, though, he just kind of argues whenever Kate suggests that maybe their asshole father might not be worth almost dying to find. And I know he saved him in Alaska, technically, but that was pure plot armor. In most situations, it's the kind of thing that would get him killed. Like, in every survivalist situation, the asshole who yells at everyone is irrational about something they might not have actually seen, and then wanders off alone, usually gets murked. So, I felt it was stupid. Maybe that's just me. Still, I really did like this show. Like I said earlier, I loved the early days of Monarch. One of the best parts was the constant use of, look, Monarch showed the generals of the US that Godzilla exists, but have you ever tried explaining giant monster research to the Treasury? They don't like approving that funding. Which is so much more interesting than the government not believing him. Like, the government officials, at least the higher up generals, figure out pretty quickly that Monarch is correct about these things existing. I mean, Monarch stumbled upon a few of them, so it's not like they don't have evidence. The government even decided to nuke Godzilla at one point, even though that Monarch thought that was a bad idea. So the question about what to do about them and how to keep it a secret and funding are far more interesting to explore because it actually gets into the core idea of, you know, the military's desire for research that's useful for war or useful developing security versus the scientists just wanting to learn new information. In addition, they clearly want to play with the Hollow Earth stuff, but has to dance around it since Monarch only confirmed that in the 2019 movie. It was actually something I was worried about when they first showed the breaches, and I have to say I was very impressed with how they got around having Monarch figured out. First off, they never bring up the idea of Hollow Earth theory like they did in the Godzilla King of All Monsters thing. They claim these portals may just lead to another dimension. They're not really sure. The only expedition ended horribly, and they buried any research even after Shaw somehow made it back mysteriously in the middle of nowhere. So when Monarch won't help, the characters go to Apex Cybernetics, which explains why Apex was leading the Hollow Earth expedition in Godzilla vs. Kong rather than Monarch, because they likely had been researching it even after Monarch threw away the information, but before Monarch confirmed its true nature and started the research again, so they would have been ahead of Monarch in that studying. This was actually very impressive to me from a writing perspective, because, hands on the table, I am nearly positive this was not planned from the start. Godzilla King of All Monsters makes it pretty clear no one believed these theories until after that movie, and even in this show they regularly have to call, like, Bill Randa a crackpot for all his theories. So the writers had to get the characters in and out of there, and have Monarch involved in several of those events, without them being so involved that they figure out that Bill Randa was right. So their solution was to let Apex Cybernetics leapfrog Monarch's research by backing the rescue attempt at the end of the series. This is a rare example of an obvious retcon making the plot easier to understand, explaining some minor plot holes like where the hell Apex came from. In fact, the writers from the show are consistently awesome when it comes to world building. Things like the Titan Alert System, Japan's anti-Godzilla defense system, and military spending increase make perfect sense and show the offense of G-Day, the term used to describe Godzilla's fight with the Mutos in Los Angeles, has affected the rest of the world. There are just small little pieces of that all around. It's great. However, with the good must come the bad. And there's not much, but it is there. Like I said earlier, I thought Kintaro alternated between bland and annoying, so I won't go over that again. However, there was also Monarch being all non-interference and secretive. It works to a degree. I feel like it's a massive change compared to the scale of their operation, like 4 years later in 2019, with multiple kaiju under investigation, a freaking helicarrier-style submarine, and helicarrier-style airbase, and all that stuff. So it feels like that's a lot of stuff to have all been built in the last 4 years, I guess. Finally, Lee Shaw's plan in modern day didn't make much sense to me. Felt like a bit slapdash and stupid. I think that was the point. Monarch was supposed to show reckless inaction for fear of consequences. Like, they're so paralyzed by how things can go wrong, they'd rather just preserve this very unstable status quo, whereas Shaw represented a desire for action, any action, entirely disregarding consequences, to the point of reckless endangerment of the entire planet. Still, his plan was, like, really stupid for someone who was this involved in early Monarch research. I get he was, like, the, muscle and military guy, not necessarily one of the scientists, but he knew enough. Finally, the show is really, really bad at explaining the context from the movies. I watched the first few episodes with my dad, and he was asking questions about the plot, which I knew as a Monsterverse fan, but the show didn't really explain. Quite frankly, a non-fan, I feel like, if somebody, like, who hadn't watched all this, or just hadn't refreshed themselves on it, would probably be a little confused to what the hell is going on and when all this is taking place, like I said before. In conclusion, Monarch Legacy of Monsters is a well-made show. Unfortunately, it's also only available on Apple TV, and that's a massive hurdle. I piggybacked off a friend's free trial, but unless you can do that, I don't think it's worth the subscription just to watch one show. For reference, I already used my Apple free trial a while ago to watch, what was it? Wolfwalkers, I think? Disregarding Apple's terrible streaming service, however, which is unfair for a show. You don't get to choose who sponsors you, necessarily. I mean, I feel like the Legendary could have gone... Alright, well, I'm not going to go on the rant. However, I would rate this as a 9 out of 10 for fans of the Monsterverse. But only a 6 or 7 out of 10 for those who haven't seen any of the movies. Look, this show expects you to know what's going on, and if you don't, you're not going to understand what's going on at all. And it's hard to say anybody could watch this. I feel like if you've watched the Monsterverse movies, even if you don't watch them closely, you can probably enjoy this show. And I think it's a well-written show. I just would prefer to base my higher recommendation on Monsterverse fans. So, yeah. So, I am working on getting my Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown review up and running. This video will likely not be out before Thursday, so there was a stream I'm going to do with a friend of mine. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to work out. Recording this Wednesday night, so who knows. And we're going to just talk about Persian mythology and go over that, because I want to try and see, like, how much research did Prince of Persia do for their study, for their, stuff. They might reference things like Samog, but even, like, cursory research brought up research for how important of a symbol that is for Persian mythology. But I want to talk about the gods they talked about in the show. That blacksmithing god, that giant snake that was devouring the world, and see, like, what was the deal. So look forward to that. If you haven't, missed that because it was a stream out of nowhere, hey, maybe go check that out. It might be fun. Not sure. In addition, the Lost Crown review is going to be released hopefully sometime this weekend if I can get enough time. And then from there, we have the, what was it, Dune Part 2. Oh my god, so that review is coming up soon! I'm so excited for that movie, like, so hyped. In addition, I still have not finished The Book That Won't Burn. Really need to finish that, but that's eventually gonna happen. So look forward to all of that in the near future. Finally, we have the out card. There should be the subscribe orb and the videos YouTube recommends. I kind of changed the way my layout works, so there's going to be these two things, and that'll be it. Those are what you click on the subscribe orb, go to my channel, subscribe, maybe click on a video, go watch something else that YouTube recommends to my channel. I have a lot of cool stuff. And I will see you all next time. Bye!